I had one of those years ago, actually myself. So those are just as aggravating, actually, if not more aggravating than just getting flatly rejected. So this is a little different, but I talked about it on the video yesterday, and I thought this would be an interesting way to follow along, um, and a little bit of break from a few other things that have been going on. Um, a lot of you might be aware, of course, that scientists do publish their research in peer-reviewed journals and things like that, and what have you. But it is a heck of a process, and you do get your papers rejected more often than you'd think. Um, and I mean, I've highlighted it here that there's been some articles that made it through peer review that I personally would never have allowed to go through peer review, not without serious argumentation, because of the quality was really poor. And that can happen. You know, peer review is definitely not a perfect thing in the slightest. Um, but it also, you know, does have a lot of articles that do get rejected. And particularly for young scientists who are learning their craft and figuring out how to write a good article and how to get published, you get a lot of rejection straight out of the gate. But I read this article, or I skimmed this article from Science, and I thought it was humorous. And in that they point out exactly what you expect to see when you get rejected, because it does happen. So from Science, this is something that's a little bit more humorous today. Here, we regret to inform you that your scientific manuscripts will be rejected. It does happen. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's one of the kinds of problems that we talk about. Those of you who are in academia or in something where you have to publish a lot, you know this very well. There is the thing of publish or perish. You're supposed to be publishing a certain amount of peer-reviewed articles every year, and peer reviewing a certain amount of published articles every year. And that's in order to maintain your career. That's in order for career advancement, to show that you are contributing, what have you. The more you publish, and the more you publish in the higher quality journals, the tougher journals to get into, supposedly, the better you're contributing, and therefore you get more advancement in your career. Like I said, nobody gets paid when we submit an article for publication. Often we are paying the journal to actually publish our stuff. So there is that. And you know, it's certainly interesting, the peer review process and publication, what you go through with that. And so I figured this would be interesting, and it's definitely not perfect. And I get, one of my fears with peer review, particularly with wokeness and postmodernism having such an influence now, is that eventually you may very well drive everybody out of being in that career because you've annoyed them, or you've castigated them, or any number of different things. And you know, you may very well end up at the point where you don't have somebody of a divergent opinion available to review an article, and you suck a whole discipline into groupthink because you have nobody who thinks differently and can challenge your presumptions when you put them in peer review. And so things that otherwise would have been shot down could get through. So I've been there for a while. I with this kind of stuff, and so it's certainly interesting. So, and this comes from a specific column in Science called "Experimental Error," which is about quirky, comical, and sometimes bizarre world of scientific training and careers. So it's a little bit of behind the scenes now. Written by scientist and comedian Adam Rubin, no relation to Dave Rubin. Back when I was the publishing kind of scientist, as opposed to my employer says everything I do is proprietary kind of scientist, there are those two kinds of things. Because if you're in a private company and you're doing science there, often it can be proprietary to the company, and that's a whole other world. My manuscripts were often rejected, and yours will be too. Sorry, but that's just the way publishing works. If you ever meet a scientist who tells you all the work was published immediately by the first journal they submitted to, then either that scientist is lying, or they need to Google predatory journals. There are journals that will just take anything to publish to try and get their credibility raised and what have you, and that can be a predatory journal. There are also predatory publishers who will just take whatever the hell they can get because they know they will then get eyes and readership and make some money off of it. So that's what happens with the predatory journals. They will just publish anything. So you have to be careful sometimes when you're publishing, don't go to something that's a piece of crap. And either way, they're a jerk for telling you in the first place. Yeah, I get that. This is not to say that scientists are necessarily good at dealing with inevitable rejection. Developing that skill often takes time, perspective, and previous misfortune to grow those ego calluses. In the meantime, if you're waiting to hear from a journal and aren't yet familiar with a standard rejection letter or are just looking for some commiseration, here's what you can expect. It is true. I mean, one of the things that's rough with peer review, and at least it was difficult for me at the time, and I think is difficult for a lot of students to grasp, is that you will probably be rejected more than a few times. You will probably be told your stuff is garbage more than a few times when you first submit. And that's part of building up some resilience to it, is you're going to be told we don't think your ideas are good enough yet. But you got to persevere in these kinds of things, and hopefully you have a good mentor when you're going through grad school that teaches you these things, which is not necessarily true. Some professors do not make great mentors for graduate students, and some professors are amazing mentors for graduate students. There's a whole gambit. Anyway, here's what you can expect. Thank you very much for your submission to our journal. When the letter starts this way, you may be tempted to pause reading just to be able to hold that uncrushed feeling in your lungs a bit longer. Of course, acceptance letters can also start with a thank you, but you can tell, even without reading further, the difference between thank you and thank you. Still, it's probably wise to continue reading. I will admit sometimes I think I've had an instance where it didn't even start with this when I had a rejection once. I think I'd have to go digging in my old emails, but I think I've had that one ever. This is certainly more humorous for me. Oh goodness, I appreciate this article immensely just on the first couple of paragraphs. Anyway, as a leading journal in whatever field, we receive some unlikely and daunting number cutting-edge submissions every year. This is bone-chilling. There's no reason for the journal to tell you how many cutting-edge submissions it receives unless it's doing so as a prelude to say, and yours wasn't one of them. This is the journal's way of softening the blow, of letting you know that you're still brilliant. It's just that everyone else is more brilliant. It does not work. There's no consolation in knowing the competition is fierce and abundant. Then that only means you'll continue to be screwed in the future. You're gonna be rejected many, many times. I don't disagree. If you're doing it and you're a young scientist doing peer review, you're gonna get rejected many, 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 many times. That is a fact of life. With some of the stuff, though, certainly not perfect, because like I said, peer review is not perfect, and they can let through an awful crap ton of bad stuff. Too, at the same time. I've pointed out a few of it. The vast majority of papers that I've seen, at least in physical sciences, tend to be very good and very well done and very worthy of being published, even if ideas and results are kind of strange or what have you. Usually they're done well. Not kidding. It shouldn't take me critiquing horrible studies, or the occasional good study. You shouldn't be taking me as critiquing horrible studies as being that all science is bad and peer review sucks and things. You should not take it that way. Because I've certainly critiqued some really bad studies. Like that, what is it that, bunch of them. If you go back through the Thursday reviews and a bunch of other things, you'll find the many studies that have been critiqued on this channel that have been shown to be terrible. Or at least I think they are. Put it that way. I'm often giving you my opinion when I'm reading through a study and what I think of the study and why I think that. I will always try and give you good logic and reason for that. Anyway. And it's not, and you know what? I actually haven't gotten it this way before. Because usually sometimes when you get a rejection letter, it's also coming from the editor, and the editor's not saying as a leading journal because they aren't the journal. Yeah. So it's not necessarily that, but I understand. I understand that, and you know what? You gotta build up some ego. Also, did you notice how the journal took the opportunity to pat itself on the back while rejecting you? Make no mistake, the act of rejecting your manuscript only gives the journal more clout. They thrive on your misfortune. Well, I don't know that. But but maybe you're wrong. Maybe the journal is just tooting its own horn, and it's about to tell you it gets lots of cutting-edge submission, including yours. Maybe this is an acceptance letter. Unfortunately, nope. We regret to inform you that we will be unable to accept your manuscript. There's a word dancing around here, and it's reject. You know, usually when I've gotten a rejection letter, they've just said it. Your manuscript cannot be accepted at this time, or the editor's decision is like minor revision or major revision or what have you. Because yeah, I mean this. You do get rejection, but usually at least when I've seen it, it's not been and others can comment. It's not been just flat reject. There is that. They will flatly reject stuff that is garbage. Or most cases they will. Notwithstanding some stuff like the Grievance Studies affair, which proved just how bad the Grievance Studies journals are. That's a whole other thing. New discourses if you want more on that. But you know, you do get the rejection. You can be asked to be okay. We think you've got some major problems, but nothing fundamental and all this kind of stuff. So do some revisions and send it back to us, and we'll go through this whole process all over again. And that. The other thing is minor revisions and what have you. It's just like, oh yeah, we think you need tweaks this way, you know, all this kind of stuff. So do that, and we'll do some revisions. And then there is the acceptance thing, which is really, really, really rare. It is extremely rare to have an article accepted straight out of the gate. Most of the time, it's anywhere from minor revisions to flat rejection. Journals will never say they reject your article, only that they are unable to accept your article. The gentleness of that sentiment might be reassuring if it weren't so disingenuous. I mean, unable to accept doesn't technically mean your article is unacceptable, only that they lack the ability to accept it at this time. Maybe, I don't know, their computer stopped working? But deep down, you know it really means they could have accepted your manuscript, but in fact, they chose not, for crying out loud, but have in fact chosen not to. And exactly how deep is this alleged regret? They reject manuscripts all the time. If each rejection gave them a legitimate feeling of regret, and, quote, I just realized I never told my dying dog he was a good boy kind of regret, they could not function in their jobs. No, the regret is not theirs at all, but yours. Wow. This is comedic. I'm just reading this for a laugh at this point now. I think this is awesome. This is an awesome comedic take on it. On something that is a very accurate thing for a lot of us. A lot of scientists do get their work rejected from journals, not just immediately accepted. Anyway, while our reviewers were impressed with quality X, we ultimately felt that your submission lacked quality Y. When you get to this part of the letter, you know you're out of the realm of a form rejection because you're reading a real rejection. Not a rejection where they turned away 90% of the papers because of space limitations, but a rejection where they turned away your specific manuscript because of a real shortcoming with your specific manuscript. This is equal parts reassuring and devastating. Reassuring because it means someone read your paper, which is one more person than the number who had read it yesterday, but devastating because with a complete understanding of your work, that person thought, nah. And that does happen. That's actually, I got to the point, it's like, whatever. When that happens, it's annoying, but we can pick up the critiques, fix the paper, and go elsewhere. You know? Your manuscript may be more appropriate for other journal that you deliberately didn't submit to, but now have to reluctantly reconsider. I have done that. Sometimes a rejection will point you toward a different journal. This is the editor's way of encouraging you, helpfully suggesting an alternate path, and exacting revenge on their competitors. We thank you for your interest in publishing in our journal and wish you the best for your future endeavors. Yeah, like heck they do. They're not really thanking you for your interest because they're not really glad you submitted the article. All it did was give them something they had to go through the trouble of rejecting, and wish you the best in your future endeavors is the rejection letter equivalent of your crush signing, have a great summer, in your yearbook. At this point, you realize you've reached the end of the email, thus eliminating the possibility that some subsequent paragraph will say, however, today is opposite day. That's it, done, rejected. Still, maybe you should read the whole email one more time. You have that the first couple of times you get it, and then you're just like, okay, it was rejected, on to the next thing. If you build up some resilience about it, that's the way it is. And the only problem that I've ever encountered with somebody is, you know what, this would be a good thing for this for this comedian, here, because I know there are many scientists, young and old, out there who have had the pain of having to go multiple revisions with a single journal because you're arguing back and forth with something with either like one or two reviewers. I would love to see that show up in one of these in a column, in a comedic column. How do you deal with that when you're dealing with like multiple revisions back and forth with either one reviewer being a pain, or two reviewers, or the editor's got continued problems, or something keeps happening that you have to go back and keep revising and revising and revising and revising and revising and revising over and over and over again. That would actually be fun. Oh, goodness. Scientists rely on publishing not just to share our results, but to keep our jobs. We're expected to publish frequently, which means we are expected to routinely generate results worthy of publishing. In that context, a rejection can feel like more than just a minor inconvenience or an ego bruise. It can seem like a literal setback to our careers. Still, you shouldn't feel bad when a journal rejects your submission. You shouldn't feel good either, because that makes no sense. But you also shouldn't take the refusal personally. Rejection is part of the process. So once you've picked up your prostrate body from the floor, try to use it as a learning experience. And who knows? Someday you may receive different email asking you to help decide whether someone's manuscript should be rejected. We thank you for reading this article and wish you the best in your future endeavors. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I figured this would be a nice change of pace for us on this channel, because for all the flack that I have given a lot with the woke stuff that's going on right now and postmodernism, sometimes publishing is really damn hard. Actually, and so I can appreciate a real comedic take on this. Like I said, I would love to see a comedic take on the, oh wait, can you revise it again? Can you revise it again? Can you revise it again? That'd be so much fun. Just to read that kind of take on there, because that is a real thing. I know of a couple of colleagues who have had their articles go for revisions, like, goodness, like 4 times with one journal. It's like initial submission and like 3 or 4 more iterations after that before it was finally published. Good grief, Mom. I think I had one of those years ago, actually, myself. So those are just as aggravating, actually, if not more aggravating than just getting flatly rejected. Goodness. So yeah, you should look at that. But his last point here is very correct. A lot of, particularly if you're in university, a lot of your career is very, very dependent on publishing. And which is the unfortunate thing is it's typically quantity and not quality. Which is why you can end up with some serious garbage stuff that can end up getting published at the same time. Part of the reason why. The other reason why is that sometimes it just doesn't peer review doesn't catch things that are terrible pieces of garbage that shouldn't be published. Sometimes that happens too. But it's one of my distinct problems with it. It's a distinct, while this is a very comedic take, a distinct and much more serious note, and I may talk about that. I may do that for tomorrow. I may do that for tomorrow, actually, just to kind of round out the theme of the week, with publishing and access to scientific journals. One of the things we talk about is the notion of publish or perish. Publish or perish, because it's a real thing for a lot of academics that you have to publish lots and lots and lots and lots of articles to be able to advance your career, or even just to maintain your current career status, whether you be a research scientist or a professor. If you're an assistant professor and you're trying to get tenure, then you have to publish a certain amount every year in quality journals and what have you over a certain number of years to then be eligible even for tenure, and then you're voted on whether or not you get tenure. Those kinds of things. And a lot of that depends upon publishing, and usually it is quantity over quality. And at the same time, if you're a professor, you're mentoring graduate students, and you may be teaching classes, and you may be sitting on faculty committees and what have you. As much as we rag on professors and ivory tower and what have you, they do a tremendous amount in their positions usually. Not to say like I said, I've got a lot of problems. I'm just pointing out the other things that most folks don't think about if they're not in that particular vein of academia. That's it. I thought you'd appreciate it, something a little more comedic, and I like that idea. I think I'll round out the week with tomorrow's video being on the problem of publish or perish for you all. So that's it for now. Just remember, there's no Thursday review tomorrow night because I'm catching up from travel last week, and I've got one really crazy article that I want to give a really good read, actually. So we will get to that. That said, I hope you all, if you like the video, hit the like button on the way out the door, subscribe to the channel, share the video, comment on the video, all that good jazz. Let me know what you think, if you knew any about this before. And with that, don't forget to join up on Locals, too. We have fun over there. Anyway, that's it for now. Until next time, I'm Adrian, and I hope you all stay curious, my friends.